Hello and welcome to another episode of Relationship Alive. I'm your host, Neil Satin. When you're stuck, how about using some of your most powerful emotional drives to get unstuck? I'm not talking about pain versus pleasure. I'm talking about your need to connect with another human and the power that connection has to either keep you stuck or transform you. Now, on this show, we've talked a lot about attachment, and we've talked about the ways that our attachment styles can influence whether our connections are healthy or unhealthy. However, today we're going to dive into something different, how you can use the science and art of attachment to help you work through any of your issues, no matter how small or how big they might seem. Before we start, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that you can grab my new, improved, and free guide to improving your communication with anyone by visiting neilsatin.com/relate. I'll show you 3 powerful shifts in your communication that will help you tackle even the most challenging situations. And perhaps most important is that you don't have to ignore your truth or your emotion. In other words, you get to be you, while at the same time keeping your conversations on track. So check it out at neilsatin.com/relate. Okay, let's get started. So today's guest, Sue Johnson, needs no introduction. She's had such a profound influence on the world of therapy and healing, and on us here on Relationship Alive. She's been on the show like 5 times. And under normal circumstances, I'd probably just say something like, and she's back again, Sue Johnson, creator of EFT and author of Hold Me Tight, and we would dive in. However, sadly, a couple months after Sue and I met to talk, she unexpectedly passed away. And so I've been sitting here trying to come up with a perfect introduction for what ended up being our last conversation, which, as you'll hear at the end, was definitely not part of the plan. So I've made a few attempts, and basically none of them have been what I wanted them to be. And I think the reality is that this just won't be perfect. So I'm going to accept that and take a breath. Now, when I drop in, I just instantly feel deep appreciation for all the moments that Sue and I were able to share over the years. Deep, deep conversations where I learned so much about myself, about relationships, about how to be a better coach. And she was so generous with her wisdom and her time. Once, there was this film crew coming to my house to shoot a spot for the local news, and she just hopped right on Zoom with me to chat and make it look impressive for the folks viewing at home. And then there were other times that we chatted offline about the whole state of the relationship universe. She was candid, she was so knowledgeable, and she was willing to entertain some of my thoughts, as crazy as they might be, about how things ought to be. And at the same time, Sue, and you'll hear some of this in today's conversation, she had such a refreshing little amount of tolerance for bullshit, and she wasn't afraid to say so. But she had this way of doing it that would make you laugh while at the same time she was setting the record straight. So let this moment, perhaps of grief, be an invitation to you. Immerse yourself in this conversation with me and Sue. And if you're inspired, there are other episodes you can check out. neilsatin.com/Sue/Sue2, Sue3, all the way through today's episode, which is Sue5, where you can go to grab show notes and a transcript. And also episode 100, where she was on with John Gottman. So Sue and I just hopped onto Zoom for this conversation, and we basically got going. I thought about editing the beginning just to make it a little more polished for you, but in the end, I decided to just leave it all in so you can get the full flavor of where we were at when we were chatting. We were reflecting on how the world had changed with the COVID pandemic. And then as we dive in, you'll hear how she made the transition from working with couples to doing more individual work and developing EFIT, which stands for Emotionally Focused Individual Therapy, EFIT. And the whole episode ends up becoming a bit of a masterclass because you'll hear so many examples of just how it all works in practice. So you can use this technique in your own life or deepen how you use this work if you're a therapist who works with clients. Plus, of course, we talk about other resources that are available for you for training and to deepen your knowledge. So there's a lot here for you. And my deepest wish is that you can sit back, enjoy the laughter, and enjoy the deep, deep care that Sue brings to you. And just know that if you're feeling some grief around Sue's passing, I'm right there with you, even now. So let's dive in together to my conversation with Sue Johnson. Yeah, the world has changed. I'm hopeful that I may be able to start doing the live shows again, because that was really fun. And, I personally still feel cautious about, I know people have kind of resumed getting together in large groups, but it still feels a little weird to me to do that.
Well, I gave my first in-person presentation in Vancouver a few months ago, and I must admit, it was neat, it was, but on the other hand, it's also neat not have to pack my suitcase and go off to the damned airport and
right.
do all that stuff. I'm real clear that that's lost its charm for me. Speaking to people hasn't. Doing what we're doing hasn't. Teaching hasn't. I still love that. But, and of course you miss something when everyone's on Zoom. Right. But on the other hand, there's the airport thing and the plane thing and the arriving in some city thing. And, that I did an awful lot of that for an awful long time. I think I'm sort of done with it. Unless it's terribly important. We're having the first summit in years on EFT in the Netherlands in June. And, when they first told me that, I said, well, there you go. Have fun. But it wasn't quite as easy as that because everybody seemed to feel that I should be there. So I don't know. I'll go to that, I think, but we'll see. It's a long. I live on the West Coast now. I live in Victoria.
Right.
And so to go to Europe,
you must fly over the top of the globe to get to.
I'm not quite sure how we go, but it's about 9 hours.
That's long. Yeah.
And that's too long. But whatever, all my EFTers will be getting together. There'll probably be over 1,000 of us. And so
wow.
It would feel sort of tacky not to go, if you know what I mean.
I hear you. Right. You don't want to just be a big head on a screen.
Although, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I guess take it as it comes.
Yeah. But EFT is, since I talked to you so long ago, EFT has changed and grown. And, in some ways, the summit is very exciting. We have an enormous number of affiliated centers now, over 90, I think, around the globe.
Wow.
And we have them in places I can't believe, like, Egypt and Iran and places that are so different, Finland, Australia, Egypt, and Iran. These, I remember saying, well, I'm not sure EFT fits with Egypt because I don't even know I'm not familiar with their culture. I don't even know kind of what it looks like to be male and female in Egypt. Forget it. The Egyptians are they're very clear that EFT fits with Egyptian culture, and we've shifted from being, I mean, I'm still known as a relationship expert, but we've shifted a lot from just looking at couples and couple therapy, because I feel, rightly or wrongly, that we've kind of done our thing there. You know, I wanted to change the field of couples therapy. Well, if you're interested, you know, in couple therapy, I think we've done that. I think we've brought emotion and attachment to the fore. We have fantastic research. It grows all the time. I can't believe the clinical significance of our research. It's just, so, you know, we've kind of done that one, and now we're focusing more on emotionally focused family therapy, EFFT, and I'm totally in love with EFIT, emotionally focused individual therapy. Don't you love the acronym? EFIT.
EFIT. Yeah, it's
Fit
great.
for life, fit for life, fit for love. Yes. And, you know, attachment science tells us what fit looks like. So that's pretty exciting. There's lots of exciting things happening. We're reaching across cultures and across races, across religions. We put out a book called Created for Connection, which is a sort of Christian slanted version of Hold Me Tight.
Oh, interesting.
And when my Christian colleagues said, we have to do this, I said, no, 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 no. I'm not doing Hold Me Tight for, you know, Jewish people and Christian people and Hindu people. And I know, you know, no, no, no. Well, he's very persuasive. Okay. So we did it, and it was actually quite fascinating because I was brought up in a quite strict Catholic school. You know, I mean, although I must admit that did not enroll me in Catholicism. Quite the opposite, actually. But
I think that's true for a lot of people, actually.
Well, you know, the nuns are wonderful people, but there's other ways of educating young girls than making them stand up and recite from heart huge bits from the Bible, right? It's like, no, it's not really the way to do it, guys. But you know, they in other ways they were great educators. So we put out that book, and that's reaching people. And Hold Me Tight programs. We have one that the Heart Institute in Ottawa, in the capital of Canada, is using, and that's an adaptation for couples where one person's had a heart attack.
Wow.
And that's been fascinating, and we've now got a huge grant to run a second study proving that not only does this program improve your relationship and help the patient feel supported, it actually impacts health behaviors, like whether you go to the gym, whether you take your meds, whether you walk around, you know, with stuff in your pocket, or you just forget it and leave it at home, you know, whether you accept your diagnosis and work with it, or whether you just deny it. And that has been fascinating. So adapting Hold Me Tight to different approaches, and the US military and the Canadian military use Hold Me Tight a lot, which I think is great. Yeah, so it's been great. And most of the writing I've been doing recently has been with EFIT, and we put out a primer in EFIT.
Yes, you know, I have my copy right here, in fact.
You do? Well, there you go, you see. Yes. And, you know, I mean, I don't always feel this way, believe it or not, when I write books. Sometimes I write books and I think, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. But with this one...
We won't say which books those are.
All right, then.
We'll assume they're all great.
Well, my favorite book has always been the book on trauma. And it's old. I can't even remember when it came out now. Trauma with Couples. But that one, the primer, I'm quite proud of. And most of the people we work with in there, we use lots of transcripts. That was a conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people we work with in that book are trauma survivors. So in the last couple of years, myself and my wonderful colleague, Leanne Campbell, have just been caught up and on fire and slightly nutty about working with all kinds of trauma survivors. Actually, mostly where in my context, it really turns into working with war vets, mm-hmm. because there's a lot of military out here on the West Coast, war vets, and working with complex PTSD, people who've been abused in childhood and so have been extra sensitive and extra vigilant and had a hard time trusting others and have, become depressed and anxious and having PTSD symptoms in their adult life. So that's basically what we've been doing. And we love to work together. People say very funny things that make me feel a bit sad for our field, actually. People say things like, it's very strange watching you and Leanne present because you love each other. And I said, yes, she was my best clinical student. She was my best clinical student, right? And then she disappeared to the West Coast for years, and you sort of lose touch with people. Then suddenly I move here, and then we connect again, and we realize we're both in the same place. We're doing individual therapy with trauma, and so everything just exploded, because if you think Sue Johnson can be passionate and over the top, committed to something and completely delirious about, throwing herself into her work, you should meet my colleague. She's even worse than I am. So we've been doing that. So that's what we've been doing in the last 4 years since I last saw you.
Great. Yeah. And so she was your co-author on the primer regarding emotionally focused individual therapy. And I feel like we've already sort of dived into the conversation in a way. Like, that was a great introduction, Sue. Thank you.
Oh, jolly good. Okay.
And it's important, right? Maybe we step back a minute and just talk about the premise, because, so much of what you described and so much of what I think is the state of what we're caught up in the world today is the impact of stress and disconnection, and how that makes people easy to manipulate at times, how that has led to fractures in families and relationships. And at its core, when I was listening to you describe the people you were working with, and in particular the impact with people who had heart surgery or heart conditions, I was thinking about how much stress is created when we have emotional experiences that we can't actually process.
Yes, and we can't process and we can't share.
Right.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, John Bowlby said that all clinical problems were about frightening, alien, i.e. they're alien to you. You can't take them in and befriend them and deal with them, alien and unacceptable emotions. And, Bessel van der Kolk in his book on trauma basically says we're dealing with an emotional disorder. Trauma is an emotional disorder. Mm. Well, actually, when you look at the book that I wrote a few years ago, Attachment Theory and Practice, which is it's a book for therapists, and it's on
my shelf over here, actually.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad it's on your shelf. When you look at that, David Barlow, who's a behaviorist, talks about that we need to think about the common things that we find across. We've become obsessed with categories and labels, and to the point where I think they're getting in the way. He basically says we've got to look at what is common across people. Well, he misses the main show in town from my point of view, and that John Bowlby said, what is common across people that are having problems, is frightening, alien, unacceptable emotion experienced in isolation. What is common? In fact, if you really ask the question, I challenge people who are watching this, how many of your clients would actually tell you that they feel alone? An enormous number.
Right.
And the ones that don't tell you that feel it, but don't know how to put it into words, okay?
Right.
So disconnection is a big one. And I feel like our world's become more uncertain, more stressful, more ambiguous. It's almost like suddenly everybody needs to pick a side on everything. I mean, even in my family, we're kind of a left-wing family, but suddenly one of my children basically announces that he's voting conservative. Well, like it's like, what? Who are you? Well, you're the same person that you're just right. So we talk about, we manage to deal with those things and stay connected. But I think at a time of stress and uncertainty, people need more connection. And instead, in the last few years with COVID and all the mistrust out there in the world, we have less connection. So we have more stress, more anxiety, more vigilance, more sensitivity, more paranoia, more us and them, at a time when we need more connection, more sharing, more support, more. And the mismatches, well, it's driving people crazy. That's the truth. And I think it's driving, if you look at even the governments in the world, Michelangelo, the attachment theorist from Israel, talks a lot about leadership and attachment, and how the evidence is that secure leaders create more cohesive, focused groups who are better at problem solving and doing what they need to do, and who don't have breakdowns. And well, if you just look at the leadership of the world, I don't know, I mean, Canada's kind of weird. Politics in Canada is like watching paint dry, okay? You guys are at least sort of interesting. When you had politics, I don't know, there's so much involved. It's like I read about US politics, not so much about Canadian, because Canadian politics is like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but even so, right, didn't, like, Justin Trudeau and his wife, they split, right?
They split, and everybody, decided that they knew what happened for at least a week. But the thing in Canada is people get over it. It's like, oh yeah, all right, okay, they split. Yeah, okay, fine. It's kind of I don't know whether our temperament is different or just the tone of everything is different. It's like it feels to me like we're half speed and half volume compared to the US, where everything gets ramped up. And I don't think I've ever met Canadians who talk to me in some ways that my American colleagues have, where what's happening on the political scene like grabs them, and impacts them and terrifies them and leaves them feeling depressed and hopeless. And Canadians don't really talk like that. They say, oh God, Justin Trudeau he wears the most terrible socks, and he has no taste. We need a prime minister who knows how to wear just plain black socks. And oh God, his counterpart, Polyev, who I call polyester, which is awfully rude of me. He's saying these things again. And, he's saying brilliant things like the cause of crime is criminals. Hey, this is Canadian politics.
I sense a breakthrough. This is
Canadian politics. But in general, I think depression's going up, anxiety's going up. What is most concerning is that in our adolescents, especially our adolescent girls, there's a huge epidemic of depression and anxiety.
And self-harm.
I think we should all be concerned with that.
Yeah.
I know that my emotionally focused family therapists are dealing with a lot of it. And with the fact that I think kids, when they're, young adolescents, they need a sort of grounded place to stand because everything's changing so fast. And I don't think our society is offering them that. So hopefully they can find therapists who will offer them that,
Right. I didn't even really think that we would talk about that exactly, but so the model has been, in terms of couples, it's been you are in an attachment bond with your partner, and so all of your habits of how you interact with your emotions and with other people, they come to the foreground when you're in a relationship.
That's
and in
right.
terms of the emotionally focused individual therapy, that's all about developing, like helping your client experience secure attachment with you as the therapist, and then ultimately with themselves. Is that
I
accurate?
don't think it's, yes, I don't think it's ultimately. I think it's the goal in EFIT is a secure connection with self.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? Well, we know what security looks like from, one of the great things about attachment is it tells you exactly what health looks like. So you know where you're going, right? If you don't know where you're going, your likelihood of getting there is, you know where you're going. And what secure attachment looks like is a confident, competent person who feels able to tune into their emotions and their experience and deal with it. They believe they can deal with it. They can get overwhelmed at times, but they can process it and order their emotions, order their inner life. And they can also reach for others. They're more empathic. I mean, if you're terrified all the time, you don't have much room for empathy for other people. That's the truth.
Right.
So, if you're balanced, if you have your balance, and the first stage of EFIT is about giving people balance, helping them look at the patterns they're caught in, their emotional relationship patterns, and how it renders them vulnerable with what looks like no solution, vulnerability, and then helping them get their balance there. And then looking at how they need to grow, what is blocking their growth, because both John Bowlby and Carl Rogers, our kind of, pillars we stand on, believed that people had a natural propensity to grow, that people want to grow. And so then your job is to not come up with all kinds of little symptom orientated tips or around the edge of the problem. Your job is go to the heart of the matter and look at the emotional blocks that get in the way of growth,
right,
and help the person work through them so that their natural propensity, which is to grow, will occur. And
okay, but so if I'm a therapist listening or watching us, I'm thinking, well, that's what I do. Like that's what I'm always doing. I'm looking for the blocks, and I'm talking my clients through the blocks, and if I'm, someone who's experienced therapy, I might think, yeah, I've talked about my blocks and my problems a lot, but they don't necessarily shift. So what's different about how you're engaging with EFIT?
You just said it, sweetheart. I've talked about my blocks. You can talk about your blocks until you're purple. Okay, it doesn't really change anything. The point is EFT and EFIT and EFFT are experiential therapies.
Right.
And you have to have an emotional experience that takes you into a new place. We used to call it a corrective emotional experience. These days, we're calling it an emotional epiphany in EFIT. We're also calling it self-defining dramas. Because when people get really into their deep core emotions that they've been avoiding all their life, and more with trauma survivors, we recognize that it's most of the time it's deep sadness and grief and a weeping for what they never had and what they were deprived of. And behind that is the longing for that, which is very threatening to touch that longing if that longing is associated with pain. But, when people can go into that, their sense of self naturally comes up. That Bowlby said, model of self and model of other naturally comes up when you're in these emotional experiences. And you have an experience. If EFT is all about going in and me standing with you and reflecting your experience back to you, the way that you can engage it in a different way, and that it's experiential. You have a different kind of experience in a session, not a talk about, not a walking around talking about symptoms.
Right. So in your primer, you talk about, I forget who it was. Maybe it was someone with the last name Arnold who had like a model of this is kind of the anatomy of an emotional experience. And so this is how you as a therapist can help a client actually truly access what they're feeling in a given moment.
Yes. And we
safely.
We don't fight people. One of my clients said, fascinating client, he's part of a course that we're just putting together on consultation on difficult clients. He basically said, this isn't going to work. Therapists can't handle me. I'm much too intense. And you're going to do what all therapists do, which is try to persuade me not to feel all these things about myself. And then he listed off the most enormous list you've ever heard, all these things about myself. And that's what you're going to do. And I said, okay. And I said, well, you are very intense. But I'm pretty intense as well. So we'll just talk here and see how it goes. But the bottom line is, what I feel like saying to him is, I wouldn't dream of doing that. What I do in EFT is I say, of course you feel this way. Of course you look at yourself and you label yourself in all these ways because you've never been seen, have you? And you were never seen, were you? And that's what you just can't bear about the world, is that nobody sees you and you don't believe anyone will ever see you, right? The little 11-year-old boy, we make everything specific. Tell me the first time you ever decided that you were these things. Oh, I was 11. Okay, can you see that little 11-year-old boy? No, I don't. What's the point of that? That's a stupid idea. I don't want to see him. I see. So it's too hard. It's too hard to even see him. Yeah, well, and of course, nobody saw him, did they? Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I feel like I can see him. I can see him right now. Yeah. And what I see is, and first of all, of course, he fights me. He says, no, you don't. And who cares anyway? And right. But that doesn't last very long because we are attachment scientists and we know that deep in your human soul, there is nothing more important to you in the end than being seen, really seen and accepted and held in your uniqueness. Nothing more important than that. So if I keep doing that, it's like he's telling me, you can't handle me. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, here I come, buddy, because I've got something that nobody can resist. And that's a map from attachment science, an understanding of your most basic needs and longings, an understanding of what happens to you when they can't be met, of how we've only got so many choices. We're brilliant and amazing beings, and we're not. We're terribly simple. We desperately need connection with other people, and then we can feel connected with ourselves, of course, because they reflect back who we are. And you can't be a self all by yourself. I can't remember who said that, but We desperately need other people, right? And when we can't get those kinds of needs met, we really don't have many alternatives. I mean, you can label, how many are there now in the DSM? Ridiculous, over 300. You can come up with all kinds of labels, but the bottom line is, if you can't connect with another person and therefore feel that you are valid and that you can, you have importance, you matter to somebody, right? If you can't feel that and you feel terrible about you and you can't connect with you and your emotions are chaos and you can't order them, you up the emotions to anger, rage, hysteria, more paranoia, freakouts, or you avoid and shut down the emotions. And when you shut you down, you shut others out. That's it, really.
Yeah.
And we work with those things.
Can we talk a little bit about the contrast between, I think, when someone has what we'd characterize as anxious attachment, they often have a lot of, there's a lot of emotion that's available to work with. So if your goal is to go in and see someone and help them feel seen, they give you all that material. How do you approach?
Chaotic. It's chaotic, right?
Right.
I mean, Alison, who I'm using to teach with, we do lots of courses on EFIT. You can find them on our ICEFT website, and I hope you'll tell people about the ICEFT website.
Absolutely, yes, and we'll have links to all of that. I might as well just mention now that this episode will be neilsattin.com/Sue, SUE 5. And we've actually had 6 conversations on the show, but one of them was paired with John Gottman. That was an episode about attraction, episode 100 of the show. But everything else you can find if you go to neilsattin.com/Sue, Sue 2, Sue 3, Sue 4. This will be Sue 5. And we'll have links to all this stuff.
Okay, jolly good. So wait, now I've lost what we were saying.
So we were talking about how when someone presents with lots of emotion,
yes,
it's very chaotic.
Yes, and so you need a map. You need a map to know what your basic emotions are. And I talk in EFT about there's 6 of them, basically. Everything else is sort of a variant. But when you're working clinically, especially when you're working with trauma, you're basically working with blocked or exaggerated and distorted shame, grief and sadness, especially, and different kinds of fear, mostly fear of rejection and abandonment. And that helps you a lot. It helps you, if you have a map, it helps you tune in. Your EFT is all about how to tune into your client and then walk with them on this journey to take them home to themselves, take them home to other people. That's what it's all about. And we do the same thing as we do in couples. If you know how to do couples EFT, you know how to do EFIT. You just don't know that you know how to do EFIT. Okay. We use what we call the Tango, the EFT Tango. I mean, we do all the things that a Rogerian therapist would do, except on speed. If Rogers looked at us, I think he'd be, well, I hope he'd be pleased, but I mean, we reflect about 1,000 times more often than he did, right? And that's okay if it's accurate, and people need the repetition. That's something I don't think we understand in therapy. If you're going to sing to the amygdala rather than chat with people's prefrontal cortex, which they're quite comfortable with, okay? But if you're going to sing to their amygdala, then you've got to do things like slow down, drop your voice, the way a mother talks to a child. If a mother says, "Oh, do stop being upset," but if the mother says, "You're upset. Yes, you're so upset. Yes, it's a doggy, isn't it? The doggy looks big. Yes." And the message is, I'm with you. I'm here with you. Your experience is understandable. It's valid. It's predictable. We can order it. You're feeling these feelings in your chest because of the doggy and you don't know what he's going to do. Yes. Attachment tells you how to be with people and attune. So we have that, and we have these skills that Rogers, I think, would like, asking very basic questions. What's happening to you right now? Heightening emotion with repetition. You have to repeat. If you're going to go into somebody's amygdala, you have to repeat. The first time you say something new or different or scary, the amygdala just says, go to hell. No, just a therapist, go to hell. Or the amygdala says, what did you say? I didn't hear that and I'm not going to hear it. And it usually takes about 5 or 6 times for the amygdala to get curious and say, oh, am I sad? Oh, I am. As my client Alison said to me, she came with 5 diagnoses. Her most favorite one was depression. We said, let's look at depression, because I don't know what that means for you. It's a great big abstract word. We went into when she felt depressed, what it looked like. And we went into that, and what she came up with. And this is a woman who told me, I'm not going to feel. I don't want to feel. And also I can't live numb. So I'm stuck, aren't I?
Yeah.
Right? Yes, so she's stuck. Well, what she tells me is, when I say I'm depressed, what I really mean is I'm heartbroken. And I say, yes. And then we stay there with heartbroken. And the thing about heartbroken is, when you order your emotion and you can name it and walk into it without being afraid, you know what to do. The action tendency in the emotion, the impulse in the emotion is clear. When you're heartbroken, you weep. You weep for the person who's heartbroken, who is you. You have a right to weep. It's worth weeping for. You weep, and then you understand what it is you're weeping for, and you're longing, right? And that's clearer and it's more manageable. So, we evoke emotion and we hold it and order it for people at the same time. And we don't have a lot of dropouts in EFT, is my experience. People, when they come in, they feel so seen. But this is using Rogerian techniques. I mean, we put all these techniques into this sequence called the Tango, where we basically show people the patterns they're caught in, the emotional patterns. Alison says to me, I say, why are you here? She says, because my blood boils all the time. Because I'm angry. Well, this is the lady who's heartbroken, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, let's talk about the last time you got angry. And so we look at the emotional patterns and the patterns with people. When you're upset, do you talk to your husband? You say, he loves you. No, you don't talk to him. No. Oh, okay. What do you do? I shut down and shut him out and, close the door. And I see. And then what is it? Then she's all alone with an overwhelming emotional experience. And attachment tells us that people don't do well with that. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are or how together you look. People don't do well with that. So the first thing we do in the Tango is we show them, we kind of go meta level, and we show them the patterns they're caught in, which are like self-reinforcing, like a rat in a wheel. And people start to see that it's the pattern that's the problem, not them.
Mm.
And we only have so many patterns, and we all, even the clever therapist, get stuck in them, just like in couples. Everyone gets stuck in negative relationship patterns. The question is, can you, not whether you get into them, but can you get out of them? Then the next thing we do is we change the emotional music, because it's emotion that's organizing everything, your inner world and your between world. So we go in and we talk about the emotion. So when I say to Alison, could you help me? What is the trigger for the anger? I could say, what's the trigger for the depression? But she's not even there yet. You have to pace with your client. Just, I don't know. I don't know what the trigger is. I just get angry. Say, oh, well, let's look. So because your emotion is basically a process. If you know the structure of something, then you can go in and start to change it. Okay. Relationships have a structure, emotions have a structure, our sense of self has a structure. Bowlby wrote all that out. So the structure of emotion goes trigger, basic perception, there's something bad here, right? Body response, right? If I stay without, the trigger is somebody makes a demand of her. On the phone, somebody tells her what they want. She goes nutty. Of course she does. Her whole childhood was about waiting for her brothers to come into her room at night and make sexual demands from her. And nobody ever saw her or protected her. So you make a demand of Alison, she goes crazy, right? She doesn't know why, she just goes crazy. And then you go into what happens to her in her body, experience, not talking about, is what I feel a bit shaky. But I don't want to talk about that. There's no point in talking about that. Where is the shakiness? Well, it's here, but it doesn't really matter. And it's not, yes, I understand. So then you go back and you put all that together. Then you say, and what do you say to yourself? What meaning do you make? Right? And she says, I don't know, other people are impossible. It's better if I just seal myself off. I don't know how to deal with this. I'm overwhelmed, right? I have to do what I've done my whole life, which is suffer in silence. Suffer in silence. That translates to suffer alone. And then I talk about how we don't do well alone. Our nervous system isn't designed for alone.
Right.
And then we go deeper into the emotion, and she comes up with not anger or shame or, any of those things, not even fear itself. She comes up with deep, deep grief and sadness.
Yeah.
And we stay there. And when we stay there, her depression starts to change because she starts to move into it in a new way, put it together in a new way, order it, move through it, understand it, right? And then, of course, we also help her close her eyes and imagine reaching out for her partner. So we do that. We go into the core emotions, and then we turn those new emotions, their new music, into a new dance where we ask people to imagine dramas. And this is Fritz Perls, except Fritz Perls did it in the service of separateness, and we do it in the service of connection. And we, typical EFT, EFIT, will ask someone like Alison to close her eyes and imagine just being able to say something very basic to her partner, because we carry the representations of our attachment figures around in our head, and say to her partner, when I'm feeling vulnerable, I can't tell you. It's too difficult to tell you. I can't tell you. You start where people are at. You don't start with, can you tell your partner, please, that you feel this deep? No, you've just asked them to leap off a cliff with a no parachute. Okay, you start where they are, which is, can you tell your partner that's too hard? So she imagines telling her partner, and then she goes home and does it, of course. I don't tell her to do it. She just goes home and does it. Or Alison closes her eyes, and this is the tape we use a lot for teaching these days, and she talks about that suddenly she's remembering that she used to hide under the bed when she was a child and go against the wall and hope that her brothers wouldn't come for her. But of course they always did. And the rest of the family didn't see it at all. And she didn't tell because she didn't know what was going to happen in the family. If she did, she thought she'd destroy the family. So, and she goes through this, and I say, and this is about connection with self in EFIT. So I say, can you see the little girl under the bed? It's amazing to me when I ask people to see their vulnerability. They usually start with no, and I don't want to, and I'm not going to, right? So you just go back there again, you say, yes, that's so hard. You stay with them where they are. That's so hard. What's going to happen if you do that? I'll go crazy. Okay, I understand. So what you tell yourself is, I'll go over it again. I'll order it slowly, softly, so it's not threatening, right? That if you let yourself see little vulnerable Allison, what is it? You'll hurt forever. Yes, I'll hurt forever. You'll hurt more. Yes, I'll hurt more. You'll go crazy. Yes, I'll go crazy. So then you have to spend your whole life holding it off, right? So yes, we talk about her emotional cycle, which is rage, shakiness, fog, zone out, go into a fog, get lost in the fog, freak out, right? Because now you're lost in the fog. And what she used to do was bang her head against the wall. She doesn't do that as a young adult, but that's what she used to do when she was an adolescent, was bang her head against the wall to get out of the fog, right? So, and she's done this is her pattern. And her pattern with other people is either to shut them out and move away from them, thousands of miles away from them, and get enraged to protect herself, or to completely shut down and shut them out, which is what she's done with her husband. So this all starts to change in therapy. And we go in and we talk about this change and what these people are doing and what's happening, and can they integrate it? Can they see what's going on? Can they let it in? And the guy who tells me I'm too intense, you can't handle me. He says, well, I can have all these experiences, but the bottom line is I'm still a traitor. So, I say, yes, let's stay there, shall we? Should we just stay there with that word traitor? You've let somebody down, right? You've betrayed somebody. You haven't met somebody's expectations. Who is that? Well, he starts off with my father and my brothers, and then my mother, everyone basically, and then himself. Oh, and we walk around in that, and we walk around in the emotions. So we process what's happening, and then we point out what's happened in the session, which is people say things like, I'll never change. And I'll say, excuse me, look at what you just did in this session. I think that's a change, isn't it? I think that's a change. And then they say, well, what did I do? And you reflect their experience back to them in emotional terms that engages them and holds them and connects them. It feels to me, and this is a source of frustration for me, that the field still basically doesn't want to use the most powerful thing in the room, which is the emotion. It doesn't. We went into analytic ideas, insight, all kinds of strange theories about what we were about. Then we went into cognitive behavioral, except for crazy people like me. We went into cognitive behavioral, change people's behavior, and everything else will follow. No, actually. Then we went into cognition. Oh, just change the bad cognitive thoughts and then everything will change. And then I thought, okay, now we're going to go into emotion. No, no, we didn't. We jumped into the brain. Oh, right. Okay. Well, therapy changes the brain. Of course it does. Eating an ice cream changes the brain. Every piece of experience you've ever had in your life changes the brain. But so what? It's like, so what? Show me that this matters in somebody's life in terms of defining who they are and how they can connect with themselves and others, So, and I keep feeling like there's a small group of us that keep saying, emotion organizes everything. And if you know how to deal with it and name it and order it, you can go in and use it to create change. And, who said to me, well, behaviorists said to me, don't you have to, well, how do you make these people practice these change conversations in couples therapy? How do you get the follow-up results you do? How do you make people practice this stuff at home? And I said, I don't have to make anybody practice anything. That's like saying, how do I make you practice bliss? Once I show you bliss, you're going to go there again and again and again, because you know what? You like bliss and your nervous system likes bliss. And synchrony with other people and being able to order your own emotions, dance with yourself and others, that's as close to bliss as we get as human beings, which is why it's called the tango, because you probably know, Neil, I used to dance. COVID wrecked that for me, but I used to dance tango, and people think tango's like love. People think tango's all about sex. It's not at all. As one of my partners said, I don't have time to get turned on when I'm dancing tango. I'm so completely caught up in, what am I caught up in, Sue? I said, you're caught up in attuning to me and attuning to the music and letting your body react to the music and to the cues coming from you. And we create something together, and we're so turned on by it. We're turned on the way birds are turned on when they do mating dances. They'll do the same thing. Swans entwine their necks and then they take it back and they put their heads on their backs. And they'll do this for hours. Why? Are they OCD? No. It's an amazingly absorbing, joyful dance. And they're checking out, as we do in adult relationships or in all attachment relationships. Are you there for me? Are you there for me? Can I predict your behavior? Will you respond to me? When I put my neck back, will you put your neck back? Will you then come back and join me? Oh, there you are. There you are. We're together. We're bonded. Synchrony. That's the joy of tango. And in a 3-hour dance, you'd probably get, if you're real lucky, you get 20 minutes of that. Okay. But it's so beyond delicious. You know, I think people get it when they sing together in choirs. Mm-hmm. They get it in religious experiences when they pray. You know, when I watch some of my Christian colleagues pray, it's so interesting. It used to feel just foreign to me, you know, and now when I watch it, it doesn't feel foreign. It feels, oh, I know that. That's an attachment behavior. That's this person feeling an inner connection with something they call God. And look at their face. They're completely caught in it. It's completely mesmerizing. It's captured their nervous system. And our version of that in secular society is sex, of course, the ultimate orgasm. You know, whatever. You know, and of course, the ultimate orgasm is all about technique, and no, it's not. It's all about emotional connection. So that was the tango, and I don't know why I'm talking about sex now when I wanted to talk about the tango, but there you go.
Yeah, well, and there's sort of the fifth step of the tango, which I'm not sure we talked about.
Thank you. The fifth step is that you validate and you say, look what you just did, and you do it the way a mother does it to a child. You know, when a child takes a risk and walks into new territory, good mums don't say, jolly good. That's not what they do. They say, oh, oh, that's fantastic. You went into the water up to your knees. Oh, you clever, you brave. Right. And we think that we outgrow the need for this. Of course, we don't at all. We don't at all. What I say to people is validate your clients at the end of a session. It has to be genuine. It's not a put on. But validate your clients authentically, but validate them like you do your dog. You watch people with their dogs. They're fantastic attachment figures. They don't say, good boy. Sometimes some people do. They say, good boy, right? And the dog has to really be attuned to get that right. But most people say, oh, you good dog. Oh, yes, you're such a good boy. You know, it's like messages. I see you. You just did something important. I see how hard it was for you. I see you. I respect what you've done. What you've done impresses me. It matters to me. It moves me. Oh, look what you've done. This is, we all need this in our lives. And the
Right,
reason
and it makes sense to me too that it sounds ridiculous to this part of your brain, to like the prefrontal cortex, but that's not the part of your brain that's going to allow you to shift your emotional and therefore your behavioral responses to life. That's the amygdala, the deeper parts of your brain. And so that part of your brain does need to be talked to ridiculously.
Yes, it is. And one of the things that Leanne and I talk about, we're teaching a lot of EFIT these days. People can find EFIT courses on the ISEF site, and we do a lot with PESI too. But, one of the reasons we love teaching together is we validate the hell out of each other. She's always telling me I'm amazing. In fact, a few months ago, I said to her, listen, I can't handle it. Okay, I'm English. If you tell me I'm amazing one more time, I'm going to pop you in the nose, okay? Because it's too much. And she just laughs and keeps doing it, of course. But the bottom line is, we both think the other person is amazing. And you don't see much of that in presenters you don't see people modeling secure attachment, of incredible validation, seeing the other presenter, validating them, learning from them, adding to them. That's not modeled in most of our presentations. Well, why the hell not? Because that's what we need to do with our clients.
Right. Yeah. I have an idea about why not. My idea about that, which I'm sure is what you think on some level as well, is that so much of what drives achievement is making up for lack of secure attachment figures in our lives. And so we come to that arena not based in praise and validation and wanting to be secure. We come there with the deficit of needing to be seen, needing to be recognized, but from a place of competition. Yeah.
It's the competition that does us all in.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need to compete? There's enough misery in the world to go around for everybody to try and have a go at changing it, right? Like why do we need to compete? On the other hand, that's not true. It's a lie, because I want people to recognize the power of emotion and be able to use it in therapy in every session, so they can create a moment of change in every session, so that therapists don't burn out. Why do therapists burn out? Because they're frustrated and they don't know where to go, right? I want therapists to come out of sessions going, yes, or yes, we hit that stuck point. This person's stuck, but that's okay, because we've outlined the stuck point, the block. And next time I trust, because I know this model and I trust the model, next time I trust that this person is going to go through that block, and I'll go with them. And I can learn with this person. I don't have to be the expert guru. What's my favorite, I can never remember, my favorite cartoon in my local paper, there's a mouse and he goes up this hill to the great wise ass on the hill, right? And I always ask him questions like, what's the meaning of life, right? And the guy, the little person on the hill says something like, well, you have to keep trying or something. And the mouse says something ridiculous like, yes, but when I try, I fail. So what's the meaning of life? And the great wise ass says, I'm going to have a break. I'm going to go away now, right? Because everything I say to you, you turn around, right? But we don't need to be the big gurus. We need to be able to connect with our clients and follow them and connect with them and stay with them and process their emotion and have a map for that, and have a model that we trust, and that we can, why am I obsessed with attachment and emotion? Because those things, all right, intellectually, whatever. Attachment's the deepest, most broad, most empirically validated theory of personality we've ever created, and it's relational. So yes, but not really. Why am I obsessed with emotion and attachment? because that obsession has never let me down clinically, never.
Mm.
Even when I've been stuck, I can think of some cases where I felt really stuck. If I stop being frustrated and feeling like I have to be the great wise ass on the hill, and if I go back and listen to my client and listen to my model, there's a clear way through. There's always a clear way through. And it always goes right to the heart of the matter. It goes to the emotional heart of things. It doesn't play around on the edges. That doesn't, playing around on I think we have to do something dramatic, because if we're going to play around on the edges with tips and little cognitive recipes, guess what? Apps can do it just as well as us. So we're in trouble.
Right, and we're, especially with AI emerging, that's definitely going to change the landscape of therapy and personal wellness.
I think that's scary, personally. I think that's very scary. Somebody sent me a thing of Sue Johnson, where an AI machine had taken bits from my talks, apparently, and put them all together.
Mm-hmm.
The point was, it wasn't me and it wasn't right. But it sounded like me, and you wouldn't necessarily know.
Mm.
And that's not knowing what is real and true. How are human beings ever going to stay grounded? If I don't know I'm talking to you, if you can be a figment of my imagination, I don't know. I think we're playing with, how far can human beings adapt? I don't know, but I'm not sure that we can adapt to me not knowing whether I'm really talking to you, what's real and what's true. Right. And how do people know what's real and true? Mostly through their emotions. They go in and they say, I feel, maybe it's stupid, maybe I shouldn't feel this way, maybe my cognitive brain says, da, 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 da. I don't know what to do with it anyway. It's, but I feel. Right. Well, I don't know if we're going to mess with that one. I think the world needs more and more therapy. So we better step up.
We're going to find out. Sue, I also just want to, did you have a hard stop at the top of the hour? Or are we good for a few more minutes? I just want to make sure.
Good for just a few more.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to end on an apocalyptic note, for sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. Yes, actually, it's not true. I do mean to be apocalyptic. Yes. Because I feel like if you're really have a view of the apocalypse, you move, you do something to change it. But maybe that's an illusion. Anyway.
Well, and I think what we're moving towards is, like we started, kind of counteracting disconnection and stress and the ways that you might be able to be manipulated, or that, even addressing, like, interacting with artificial intelligence, not necessarily knowing what the right boundaries are. We're counteracting that with, how well can you know yourself? How well can you actually have the experience of what it's like to be seen and held and valued and validated? And then you have some real experience that can be, I think, a gauge against how you meet the world.
Hey, there you go. That's brilliant. You've come up with that's right. And so what therapy can do is take people into a secure connection with themselves. But to do that, therapists have to be willing to go into the emotional frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay. While many people who tune in are therapists, there are many who are just looking for kind of their own path and some support. And I'm wondering, as we've chatted, there's been a lot where I've been like, oh yeah, I could see how you might adapt portions of that to how you talk to yourself, how you show up in your own experience and recognize, like, the validity of what you're experiencing, and how you give yourself safety.
But I'm wondering if there's something that occurs to you in this moment about maybe someone who's not, maybe they're gonna try and find an EFIT therapist, but in the meantime, how do they recognize and honor like their experience, their pain in a way that will be supportive to them?
Well, I think one of the things, and it sounds sort of like simple, and I mean, one of the things we do in EFT is, because we have a theoretical map, we validate people, we normalize. People are ashamed of their emotions. It's like, I don't feel afraid. Well, the bottom line is 99% of people in this situation would feel afraid. And here's what they would be afraid of. And the person goes, oh. So what I've just told them is, you're not strange and alien and somehow not human and somehow should be ashamed. You're just a regular person. One of the first tapes I made of EFIT, this man told me, I can never accept anything positive. And he talked about being the head of a team that had won a championship. And as he came off the court, the head of the other team said to him something like, that winning move was tacky. Okay. So he comes off the court. Does he say, hey, my team won. Hey, I captained a winning team. Hey, we did great. No. He comes off the court and says, am I tacky? He's probably right. That was a tacky move. It was a deceptive move. I came up with it. I'm tacky. He's right. I'm tacky. So this man tells me I'm the only person in the world who takes a positive thing and messes with it, right? So you can do a lot of things with that, but one of the things you can do if you're an EFT therapist is you show up as a person. Presence, emotional presence is key, and attunement. So in his case, I said, oh, well, when I get a new book, I open the door and somebody puts it in my hands, and for maybe 15 seconds, I say, oh, wow, look at that. Isn't that amazing? That's incredible. I did that. And that's how long it lasts, right? And I know who it is. My mother's voice comes up in my head and says, you don't think this is important, do you? You don't think anyone's going to read this book, do you? You don't think it's going to make any difference in the world, do you? You're just getting a swelled head, Susan. You just got a swelled head here. This doesn't matter at all. Go and make supper and stop being so foolish and ridiculous, and right? And the trouble is that some of my nervous system is really tuned to that and takes her in. So, but if I'm aware of what's going on, I can just smile and say, Mom, you never understood who I was. And the bottom line is, you were one jealous lady. And you wanted to control me and you never could. And so you were pretty angry about that. And you're not going to control me. I'm going to feel good about my book. And, but that doesn't just happen overnight. That's
right. You were talking earlier about, your conversation with the behaviorist and like, how do you get people to practice? But the reality is that there is practice involved in experiencing, like kind of shifting into that defeated place and then finding the place in you that's wise, that has perspective, that can speak to like the offending voices that you hear, right?
Yes, and realizing that voice came from somewhere else.
Mm.
And realizing that the stories you tell yourself are just that most of the time. They're the stories you tell yourself, and the powerful stories always come from attachment figures, which is why, in move 3 of the Tango, we talk about you seeing yourself, your most vulnerable self often, being able to hold that part of yourself, being able to go in and say, I see you, I hold you, I'm with you now, you're not alone. right? Being able to hold that vulnerable part of self, and also being able to shift and talk to the people who gave you the negative messages. Being able to say, as my client who says, I could never say that to my mother. I said something incredibly mildly angry. I said, so you could never turn to your mother and say, terribly mild. And this client's face looked horrified. She said, I could never say that to my mother. Right. And we said, okay, let's stay here. Let's look at this. So when your mother tells you these things, what did you tell me she says to you? You get specific. That's the other thing. You don't talk about things. You go into things, into the experience. You look at how somebody constructs their experience. That's what experiential therapy is. And you stay there with that. And you say, and this is what your mother would tell you. Could you close your eyes and can you tell your mother what happens to you when she says that? My client weeps and says, it hurts. It hurts, Mum. Right. And then she says, I say, what's happening? She says, she can't hear me. Then she weeps again. Right. But listen to what she says. She says, she can't hear me. Not she's right. I'm a terrible, right? It's when you go into these dramas, they start to change because most of the time we don't want to go into them because they're scary and painful, so we stay away. So then we just listen to the messages about who we are. Hey, I can look at some of my very closest friends, and the main difference in who we are is that they went through English working class indoctrination into how to be female, just like I did. The difference between us was I had a father who believed in me and who never defined me that way, even though my mother was so negative. And also that because I had my father, I was allowed to get mad. And I was allowed to get mad in a coherent, focused, balanced way. And from my point of view, that's changed everything in my life. Because I look at some of my other friends and they don't get mad. They go into withdrawal or retreat or panic. And there's a certain point where if people don't know me very well, people who know me know this. There's a certain point where if you go for Sue Johnson, she turns and fights. But but she doesn't turn and fight frantically. She turns and fights with accuracy and, with like, excuse me, no, that's not going to happen. That kind of, right? So what was the difference there? The difference was how I handle my emotion. Where did that come from? It came from my dad. My dad, bless his heart. Where did he get it from? I don't know. Telling an English working class girl, you can do anything. Where the hell did he get that? I mean, like, that wasn't part of our culture. Human beings are incredible. We can be so destructive, but we can also be so creative and so amazing. And some people sort of know how to tune into positive attachment and give it to their kids, even though they've never seen it. And that's a mysterious thing. But Bowlby would say, but it's tuned into you somewhere, right? You know what that drama looks like or what it's supposed to look like. All you have to do is access it, right? Anyway, this has been a fun talk.
Thank you so much, Sue. It's always just such a pleasure to spend time with you, and I feel like it's been an experience, this conversation, for sure.
Well, that's good. That's good that it's been an experience. It's lovely to be with you.
And let's make sure that it's not 4 years before we connect again.
Yeah, right. That was a bit long, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you, Sue.
Bye now. Thank you for having me. Okay, bye-bye.
My pleasure.